I'm throwing a disclaimer out there right now. We're going to talk about an old rapper here and an old rapper's opinion. I don't necessarily think he's hating. Y'all just hear me out before y'all start calling him old, okay? I'm just giving a disclaimer. Oh, Melle Mel was on an interview by, out to my cousin that sent this to me too, an interview by Glad TV. And I actually got a chance to watch. Yeah, shout out to Crunchy Black. And he was getting interviewed by Glad TV. And just talking about, just the culture and how he got started and, just OG shit from them back in the days. But the topic of cultural appropriation came up, or culture vultures, however you want to word it. And he had a stance that I didn't necessarily see him taking, but I tried to paraphrase some of the comments that he had because we're not trying to get dinged for playing a video or whatever. But in a sense, he said all the black artists today in hip hop are the ones that are really doing the cultural appropriation. And he also said that it's ridiculous to say that anybody that's not black or someone that's from another culture that tries to get into hip hop is a culture vulture when hip hop is the actual culture vulture. And he went on to talk about how when they were coming up, they used all type of music. They used, they didn't sample or play just funk. They played Bob Marley. They used jazz. He was like, if I rapped over a Madonna song, it turned into hip hop. He said we used everything. He said we used it. He talked about bongo rock. He said that's not hip hop, but it's one of the biggest hip hop records ever because of all the stuff they used to listen to and sample and play back in the days. And he was like, people try to politicize hip hop, try to turn it into something that it's not. He said hip hop has always been a vacuum. It sucked in everything because they used everything back in the days, the foundation of hip hop. And he said African Americans right now, hip hop are selling out hip hop. He said it's bigger than the dude on the corner. It's bigger than the street dude. It's bigger than the concept of you ain't real unless you a street nigga. And he said even the DJs now are on the tough shit when they promote the music. That it's supposed to be about all of it, but the trap and the D-boys and all that have been moved to the forefront. As a result, all of this shit is selling out hip hop as a whole. He thought the concept of just calling somebody a culture vulture, like Bruno Mars or the white guy that raps, he thought that was bullshit because it's always been cultural appropriation in hip hop. I've never heard that take. That was interesting to me. What do y'all think about that, man? Does he have a point, or is he out of his mind and just being the old guy that's mad? And I'll come to you first.
Why would you think about that? Me first?
Asking.
All right, what does the white dude on the show think about the black guy's legend hip hop take on his own culture? Well,
take him out the equation, brother, like you always do, just on the surface.
Well, it's related though, right? So,
yep.
I think it is an interesting way of looking at it. I think he makes some good points, actually. I mean, to an extent. I mean, hip hop does sample from pretty much all different types of cultures.
Right.
I think it may make sense to also, what he may not be factoring in is that maybe the profiteering around it and where it comes from. Hip hop kind of comes from taking like pieces of everything, of whatever you can grab to kind of create something, right? So,
right.
I don't know. I don't really have a ton to say about this. I honestly, I think I'd have to think about this a little bit more. I'm gonna wait and see what you guys have to say, because that's actually something I've never really thought about.
See, that's why I thought this one would be a good one, because I've never looked at it that way. I look at it from that way on the standpoint, and Lone, you would be able to relate from producer standpoint. Talk about sampling records and the genres that we go through, right? To turn it into hip hop, or with the records that we make when we make beats, or you might sample something that's a Brazilian rock record and turn it into some neo soul type shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that type of thing, because we dig in crates everywhere.
But I think also when we talk about culture appropriation, we're typically talking about legitimately stealing from like it's typically when white people will steal from a person of color's culture and make it popular and profit off of it, right? And so can the same argument be made when the culture that is like grabbing and quote unquote stealing from different cultures is in need in itself? Like, can that argument still be made? I don't know. So
it's a good question.
Start on it.
That's a good question. Like how about this then? Since we talked about that side of it, piece about current artists, where he talks about just the artists in general today are selling out the culture because of what is being pushed to the forefront. How everybody's tough now, and it's just a thing across the board. He said there's no room for just the regular person in hip hop. So it is dope. If you're not a street nigga, you don't have street cred. It's almost as if you don't have any clout in today's hip hop era because of just the way things have gone. Like, he was really pissed off about that part, saying that the culture's been sold out because of how it's being portrayed and the types of joints that have been pushed to the forefront. It's not about has it existed before. I think he's talking about how big it is now, today, 2021. Jay Diff, what do you think about that, man? Like, you can address today's artists, or you can talk about, what he mentioned in terms of, hip hop borrowing and sampling back in the day.
For the first part, borrowing and sampling music, my personal opinion, is not cultural appropriation. Lone did make an excellent point as far as taking what you had and making something out of it, which was part of the art form. Saying break beats, they were finding loops in break beats and running the break beats back in order to pretty much form those elements of hip hop, the dancing, the breaking, the emceeing, the DJing, all that formed from using the stuff that you had available to you, and it turned into this that we call hip hop today. And that in itself is culture. You know what I'm saying? Being able to do that. That's not appropriating somebody else's culture because it had never been done before. So how can you appropriate something that's never been done?
That's a good point.
You can take pieces from here and there, but in the same, it's still not appropriating. In my personal opinion, we kind of had this discussion when we talked about Bruno Mars. As far as the newer artists, that still, to me, I know you said we're talking about a older cat in hip hop. That still comes off to me as the old head that doesn't like what's going on out here. And we can attest that, I mean, there's shit that we don't like. There is a lot of shit that we do like, though, that you may not even be aware of. And it's part of not being hip to everything that's out. If all you're doing is paying attention to what you're force fed or what you see on TV or on the radio, then yeah, you're going to say that. It also plays into the actual cultural appropriators who want to put the negative energy out there to make it seem like this is the only type of hip hop that you have to listen to. You know what I'm saying? And it's not the case. So as a pioneer of hip hop, I mean, he made the message. You know what I'm saying? He needs to know better than to just be skimming surface hip hop, because somebody like himself, he had to be discovered and found. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't what was being played at the time. It wasn't what was being force fed to him. So if that's not what was happening then you can't take that now that hip hop is the number one selling music genre out there.
That's fair. I'm not mad at that. I think your point, I think it may have been narrow from a standpoint of just focusing on like what you see mainstream wise, just what you see, what's pushed. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that it'd be a part where he was just kind of focusing in on that as opposed to a broader look at it. But I do think he's correct when if he is assessing the mainstream. I do think he's correct in what he's saying, but I don't want to alienate. If I'm following you, Want to alienate the
But
rest of.
it's still kind of that old man, mad old head type dude. I'm saying mad at what's going on out here. That's how I kind of take that, and I do agree to a certain extent that there is people aren't as unique when it comes to the art form of rapping and hip hop. They do kind of focus on the same things a little bit here and there, but that's if you're only skimming top layer. And Bringing Down the Band has kinds of layers of different type of hip hop you could tap into. I mean, we just talked about 𝗀𝗄 last week. I'm saying if we're talking about 𝗀𝗄, when you're comparing 𝗀𝗄 to probably the cats he's talking about, then that's two different ball games. You feel me? You can't say that and say that you're tapped all the way in. That's all I'm saying.
Right on. I can dig it. Jay Moore, jump in there.
Well, you know, in a way, I think Melle Mel does have a bit of a point. I mean, when you think about the things that are trends, even in hip hop, going back from the 70s until now, you know, a lot of the things were things that we made our own. Like, look, I have on a hockey jersey right now. At one point, that was a thing that you saw in a lot of rap videos back. Now, I actually like hockey. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to hockey.
True. This is true.
I'm actually a fan.
It's true.
But you know what? Like when you would go back to 1994, you look at those Nas and Black Moon and Wu-Tang videos, and you saw all those people with hockey jerseys on. You know, technically, you could say they're appropriating hockey culture, or like remember there were cats that used to wear the ski goggles on. They weren't going skiing. Like they were. That was. We've always taken things that had nothing to do with us and made them into things that are reflected in hip hop culture. And you can say that. I mean, like, because a lot of times, you know, especially before hip hop became mainstream and it was a thing that people just did out in the park, they were cutting up those old rock records. That's, you know, the fact that they had walked this way, it was because everybody who was cutting up records back in the day, they already knew that was a break record. So it wasn't anything too crazy. So in a way, I do think he has a point there where, yes, you know, people have appropriated hip hop culture, of course, but let's not act like parts of other people's cultures, whether it be, like I said, sampling jazz, sampling rock, sampling country, you know, or folk records. You know, the stuff that has made some of the hardest hip hop records ever are some of the, if you just listen to them for what they are, these aren't hard records at all, you know. And so, like, there is a bit of, like, when you're talking about sampling, you are talking about appropriating. Now, mind you, you know, in the modern era, artists have had to pay for those samples, so it's only so much appropriation when you got to come off that monetization.
There we go. We go.
I don't want people to get that confused, but, you know, I understand where people want to be protective of the culture, especially if you're one of the forefathers. So I'm not mad, and he did bring up what I consider to be a decent point. But once again, I think Jay Diff, and we've talked about this several times, where, of course, you're not, if you don't like the 15 songs on the radio, you are not bound by any law to listen to them over and over again. You know, if you don't think these guys are doing it right, there's a whole bunch of guys who are carrying on tradition, and you need to make sure that you have, you know, the same love for them when they're doing something great, and put that same energy that you have when you're talking shit about something that you don't like. That's the thing that gets me.
100%.
Is like, okay, there are people that will, you know, tweet 20 things about Cardi B about how they can't stand her, but do you ask him, oh, well, what are you listening to? He's like, I'm not, you know, you can't even get into a conversation with them about music because all they know is the stuff that they hate. And that's, you're not really a fan of music if you're one of those people. So, you know, once again, I think this was a cool thing for him to bring up because, like I said, to a certain extent, without appropriating and without recognizing other cultures, there would be no hip hop, you know. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still protect this thing from people who would come in from the outside and act like they've just discovered it. And they're, like I said, when people come in, you see they're talking about, ooh, look, the new trend for spring is boxer braids, and he's like, aren't those just cornrows? You know, I saw this one article with like, oh, check it out. The new trend for the winter is going to be Timberlands. It's like,
let me ask you.
You could say we appropriated that, but y'all acting like Timberlands is something new because y'all just figured it out.
Let me ask y'all this. Why is caring for the culture associated with hating?
It's not always, but a lot of times people tie their hate into something,
because I feel like they're tied together unfairly. I feel like if an older generation artist says they care for the culture, they're automatically put into they hate everything that's out now. I don't think that's accurate.
I think it has a lot to do with them not paying attention to what's going on out here. Because if you're only listening to the surface and you're only skimming the surface, then you're only paying attention to that. So a purveyor of the culture, forefather of hip hop, got to do better than that. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of stuff that coincides with
laziness.
What you're talking about.
If you listen to, if you're not one-sided on terms of how you listen to music, and you do listen to, I'm not going to say everything, but you are versatile in what you listen to. If you are that person and you still care about how hip hop comes off, how is that hating? That's my thing. You can still have a wide lens and listen to music and just care about the culture. I don't think they go together.
I think it depends on what your definition of hating is.
But this is the thing,
because
a lot of times when people try to consider, it's almost like they're looking to be on this cultural and hip hop purity test. It's like, instead of talking about the fly shit that somebody just did, they'll be like, well, let me tell you why I don't like Drake and I don't like Cardi B. It's like, we didn't ask you all that. Tell me what you are listening to. And a lot of times people, it's like it changes every few years. Just like I remember I was watching this documentary, and like this dude, like, for him to be credible, he was like, yeah, I don't F with Puff Daddy. It was like, well, what do you like?
Jay's making a good point. Jay's making a good point, because
measure of purity as far as how the way this culture is concerned.
Because I think it's considered hate, and I'm guilty of this in the past. I don't think I'm this way really that much as I used to be, but like, the best way to not be a hater is to just really kind of shut up and not talk about the stuff that you don't like, and just talk about the good stuff. Like, talk about what is great hip hop culture, talk about what is great about it, and just stop talking about the stuff that you don't think that it is, because all that does is propel the stuff on the bottom that you don't like back up to the top. And then you're also not giving that time to spend to promote and share those great things that you love about the culture in general. That's why we never shared stuff on Bringing Down the Band that we didn't like. We didn't. We just shared stuff we liked.
If
we didn't like it, we just didn't talk about it. We just kept it moving. That's just the way it was. And it's, to me, that's the best way to propel something that you like, is just to talk about it and just not talk about the other stuff, even though we're talking about, Lil Mama or whatever her name is. But I'm a hypocrite. I
promote the shit that I like the stuff that I listen to. I'll talk about it till I'm blue in the face. I'm saying, but if the conversation comes up about something that I'm not aware of, just tell you how I feel about it. And sorry if I don't like it. You can classify me how you want, but that's just my opinion.
I feel like every time we have this conversation, you feel like you have a target on your back.
I always have a target, but I embrace it though. Nobody's gonna force me to like shit I don't like. I don't care. I've never been that guy, so I'm not gonna start. But I thought Melle Mel had a good.
How's it hating?
Right, like, cut it out. That's a lazy take. You hating, lazy.
Yeah.
I feel what he's saying though. Like, I think he has some good points, and he shocked me with that take, because I ain't see that one coming. I really didn't. Like, I didn't see. He actually was like, we was ripping some everything and playing some everything, and he wasn't trying to hide from it. He was open about it. Like, we started that shit, so. I didn't see that take coming, so I kind of threw me off a little bit. But
and in the same token, a lot of shit that they was taken from was shit that was already started by Black culture, just got recycled and turned into white culture, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So when you're talking about rock and roll, when you're talking about jazz, when you're talking about blues, if you're taken from those different forms of music, at the end of the day, those are Black forms of music, and started out as black forms of music. Then,
Yeah.
not to mention, okay, you get some other subgenres out of there that may have taken from those. So it's a circle. If you're thinking about that, it's damn near what you say, the circle of life. Is that what it is?
Circle of life. That's the circle of life.
Coming right back
That's
to you.
100%.
So, hey.
It's 100% the circle of life. Even Long
it's
smiled
all-
on that one.
It's all, but I mean, it's all in the nuance. Everything that we're talking about is in the nuance, right? So this is a cool way to talk. This is a cool conversation because we're talking about the nuances of cultural appropriation. It isn't just this random term, you know, like there are specificities to it. You know, it does. I think somebody in the comments mentioned that this is a term that gets kind of thrown around, but a lot of times, I don't think that necessarily, I think a lot of people see the outside term and just kind of throw everything into it without really maybe paying attention to what's all involved in why somebody is saying something, especially if they're a part of it. But, you know, yeah.
It's well said.
If you've enjoyed this segment of the New Old Heads podcast, make sure to join our live show every Tuesday from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/newoldheads. And we invite you to join our hip hop community on Discord. Access it by going to newoldheads.com/community for talks on hip hop, sports, music, news, and everything else.